What if I told you the Vietnam War wasn't just fought with guns and bombs, but with ghosts, monsters, and even UFOs? Forget what you learned in history class, because we're diving into the strange, the spooky, and the downright bizarre tales that emerged from the jungles of Southeast Asia. The Vietnam War was a brutal conflict that scarred landscapes and lives, but beyond the visible devastation, it left behind something else, a haunting spiritual echo. In Vietnamese culture, there's a profound belief that a soul that dies violently, far from home, without a proper burial, cannot rest. These souls become wandering spirits, or ma. This deeply held belief wasn't just a part of local folklore, it became a weapon of war. The U.S. military's Psychological Operations Unit, or PSYOPs, caught wind of this. They thought, what if we could turn these beliefs against our enemy? This led to one of the most chilling military operations ever conceived, Operation Wandering Soul. In 1969, they began a campaign of psychological terror. They recorded tapes in Saigon, filled with eerie funeral music, the sounds of women and children wailing in sorrow, and a ghostly voice, supposedly of a dead Viet Cong soldier. The voice would whisper warnings in Vietnamese, things like, "My friends, I am dead. It is hell. I am in hell. Go home, my friends, before it is too late." Imagine being a young soldier, deep in the jungle at night, exhausted and on edge. Suddenly, from the sky above, a helicopter begins blasting these horrifying sounds. Patrol boats on the rivers did the same. The goal was to prey on their superstitions, to break their morale, to make them believe their fallen comrades were calling to them from beyond the grave, urging them to desert. Did it work? Well, the results were mixed. Reports suggest that many local farmers and even some South Vietnamese soldiers were terrified. They started avoiding areas where the ghost tapes were played, believing the land was genuinely cursed. U.S. commanders, however, were divided. Some claimed it caused mass desertions among the Viet Cong, while others dismissed it as having little to no real impact on seasoned enemy fighters. Regardless of its military effectiveness, Operation Wandering Soul shows how warfare can bleed into the supernatural, turning spiritual beliefs into ammunition. But the hauntings weren't just manufactured for the battlefield. They seemed to spring up organically in the war-torn cities as well. Take the chilling story of the apartment building at 727 Tran Hung Tao in Saigon. This massive complex was doomed from the start. It was originally designed to have 13 floors a number, considered extremely unlucky. During its construction, a string of fatal accidents plagued the site. Workers fell, and morale plummeted. The project was on the verge of collapse. Desperate, the owner supposedly consulted a shaman for a dark and disturbing solution. The legend says the shaman told them that to pacify the angry spirits of the land, a terrible sacrifice was needed. And so, the story goes, the bodies of 4 virgins were secretly buried at the 4 corners of the building's foundation. This gruesome act was meant to bind guardian spirits to the property and ward off any further evil. The building was completed, but the hauntings didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. Residents for years afterward reported all sorts of terrifying phenomena. They heard blood-curdling screams echoing down empty hallways, disembodied whispers that would follow them into their apartments, and cold spots that would appear out of nowhere. The most famous apparition was that of a ghostly American GI, often seen walking hand in hand with a spectral Vietnamese woman, forever wandering the corridors of the cursed building. The building stands abandoned today, a decaying monument to its dark and tragic past. As if ghosts weren't enough, the skies over Vietnam held their own mysteries. In January of 1969, near the Kool-Aid Defense Command, something truly bizarre happened. Military personnel witnessed a strange, glowing, egg-shaped craft, about 15 to 20 feet across, descending silently from the sky. It landed briefly near a munitions depot. There was no engine noise, no rotor wash, nothing you'd expect from a known aircraft. And then, just as quietly as it arrived, it lifted off and vanished. When they checked the radar logs, there was no trace of it. Stranger still, some log entries from around the time of the sighting mysteriously went missing. Was this just a rare weather phenomenon, like ball lightning, which can sometimes appear as a glowing orb? Or was it something else, a secret military drone? Or, as some of the witnesses believed, a genuine unidentified flying object, an extraterrestrial craft visiting a human war zone? We'll likely never know for sure, but the incident remains one of the most compelling UFO sightings of the entire conflict. And from the skies, we go deep into the jungle, to the Central Highlands, where soldiers on both sides reported encounters with a creature straight out of a nightmare. They called them rock apes, or sometimes the Ngoi Rung, the people of the forest. These weren't just regular monkeys. Descriptions from US Marines and NVA soldiers were strikingly similar. A bipedal muscular primate, standing around 6 feet tall and covered in reddish-brown hair. These creatures were known for their aggression. They would throw rocks at patrols with incredible force and accuracy. Some accounts even claim the rock apes learned to mimic the soldiers and would pick up and hurl live grenades back at the troops who threw them. The stories were so widespread that after the war, a high-ranking North Vietnamese general actually led an expedition to find definitive proof of the creature's existence. He failed. University professors and cryptozoologists have also searched, finding intriguing footprints but never a body, a photograph, or any hard evidence. Were the rock apes a real, undiscovered primate species? Or were they just misidentified animals, their descriptions exaggerated by the stress and fear of jungle warfare? The jungle itself seemed to be alive with spirits. Local Vietnamese guides would often warn American soldiers about certain patches of the forest, telling them they were haunted. They called the spirits Ma-Hn, or Vong. These weren't just gentle wandering souls. They were described as malevolent phantoms with jet-black eyes and sharp fangs, born from the violence that soaked the soil. For a soldier already pushed to the brink, sleeping in a jungle rumored to be filled with vengeful, fanged ghosts was a unique kind of psychological torment. These stories of government-made ghosts, haunted buildings, UFOs, and jungle monsters are more than just campfire tales. They show us how the extreme stress, trauma, and cultural collision of the Vietnam War created a space where the lines between reality and myth became hopelessly blurred. In the fog of war, the human mind, desperate to make sense of the senseless horror around it, latches onto the supernatural. The battlefield becomes a place where personal demons and ancient folklore can manifest as very real-seeming threats. The ghosts of Vietnam weren't just in the soil. They were in the minds of everyone who was there. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think? Are these stories just products of wartime stress, or is there something more to them? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's strangest mysteries. See you next time.